Who is the new masked villain in Daredevil, Born Again? We need to talk about the most terrifying villain Daredevil has ever faced. Because in episode 4 of Daredevil, Born Again, something dark, something brutal, and something truly disturbing was unleashed in the MCU. And trust me, this isn't just another villain, this is a nightmare given form. A horror unlike anything we've seen before. And if you thought Matt Murdock had suffered enough, think again. Because this changes everything. Think about it. Matt Murdock is already drowning in chaos. Bullseye brutally murdered Foggy Nelson in the very first episode, leaving Matt shattered. Hector Ayala, the White Tiger, was gunned down in cold blood just after Matt fought to clear his name. Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, is struggling to hold on to his crumbling empire, his grip slipping more each day. And Frank Castle, the Punisher himself, he's spiraling, more dangerous and unpredictable than ever before. But none of them, not even Kingpin with his power, not even the Punisher with his wrath compared to what's coming next. Because what's coming next is beyond power, beyond vengeance. It's pure, unrelenting horror. Because in episode 4, we got our first glimpse of Muse, the kind of villain who doesn't just haunt the night, but reshapes it into something even darker. Something that lingers long after the screen fades to black. Now, if you don't know who Muse is, buckle up. Because he's not just another criminal in Hell's Kitchen. He's not just another villain looking for power or influence. Muse is something else entirely. He is the most terrifying kind of evil, the kind that doesn't follow any rules, that doesn't have a predictable motive. He doesn't want money, control, or even revenge. Muse just wants to create. And his canvas? The city itself. His materials? Blood, bodies, and the screams of his victims. He isn't just a psychopath, he's an artist, and every crime he commits is a twisted masterpiece in his eyes. But here's the thing: Muse doesn't paint with brushes. He doesn't sculpt with clay. He creates his art with blood. In episode 4, we saw it begin. A masked figure, dragging a body into a dark tunnel. Later, we hear the screams, the blood being drained, and then we see him. The white costume, covered in streaks of red, blood running from the eye holes of his mask. And in that moment, the MCU changed forever. Because Muse is not just a villain. He's a nightmare. But why is he doing this? What does he want? Is it simply chaos that drives him? Or is there something even more sinister at play? Does he see himself as a messenger, delivering a twisted gospel of suffering? Or is he just a force of nature, unstoppable and uncaring, creating because he must, destroying because it's the only way he knows how? If we look at the comics, Muse isn't just a killer. He's an artist in the most horrific sense. He believes that art should be pure, unfiltered, and without restrictions. To him, true artistic expression isn't found in paintings or sculptures, it's found in suffering, in death itself. He doesn't crave money, power, or even revenge. Muse only wants to create, and his canvas? The city itself. His materials? Fear, chaos, and the lives he twists into his unsettling vision. He isn't just an ordinary criminal. He sees himself as an artist, transforming the world into his masterpiece, one horrifying act at a time. But Muse doesn't paint with brushes or sculpt with clay. His creations are carved from the shadows, his work leaving behind a trail of mystery and terror. In episode 4, we saw the beginning. A masked figure, vanishing into the darkness with an unknown captive. Later, we hear the echoes of agony, the signs of something unspeakable unfolding. And then we see him, his white costume marked with deep crimson streaks, a haunting sight that changes everything. In that moment, the MCU was never the same again. Because Muse isn't just a villain, he's a living nightmare. But what drives him? What does he truly seek? Is it chaos for chaos's sake, or is there a deeper, more unsettling purpose behind his actions? Does he see himself as a messenger, delivering his twisted philosophy through terror? Or is he an unstoppable force, creating simply because he must, destroying because it's the only way he knows? In the comics, Muse is more than just a threat. He is an artist in the darkest sense. He believes that true art is unfiltered, unrestricted, and raw. To him, the purest form of expression isn't in paintings or sculptures. It's in the stories of those who suffer, in the moments of fear that define existence. Now, think about what this means for Daredevil. Matt Murdock has already lost so much. He's been broken, beaten, and pushed to the edge. Every battle, every sacrifice has cost him a piece of himself. And now, he has to face something unlike anything before: a killer who doesn't operate by the usual rules, a predator who thrives on chaos. Muse doesn't make demands. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't even care if Daredevil comes after him. Because to Muse, every fight, every struggle, every drop of blood spilled, it's not just a consequence, it's a brushstroke in his grand, horrifying masterpiece. And the more Daredevil fights back, the more beautiful Muse believes his work becomes. And that's what makes him so terrifying, because you can't reason with him, you can't predict him, and you can't stop him in the way you stop ordinary villains. He's not after power or revenge. He's after something far worse, an endless, evolving nightmare of his own creation. Wilson Fisk. He wants power, control over the city, and the ability to shape it in his image, the Punisher. He wants vengeance, to wipe out the criminals he sees as irredeemable. But Muse just wants to create without limits, without rules, without restraint. And that means he'll never stop. As long as there's pain, as long as there's fear, as long as there are bodies to be used and blood to be spilled, Muse will continue his twisted artistry, turning the city into his endless, nightmarish gallery. Now, here's where things get even crazier. Because Muse isn't just a random serial killer. His story goes even deeper. In the comics, Muse had a brutal rivalry with Blindspot, Daredevil's former sidekick. And get this, Muse actually blinded him. Took away his sight. But that didn't stop Blindspot from coming back for revenge. In fact, their fight was so intense that it ended with Muse's death. In the world of Marvel, death isn't always the end. Because Muse didn't just die, he went to hell. And in the comics, while he was in hell, he found someone else. A tortured soul named Morgan Whittier. Someone who, just like him, saw beauty in horror. But Muse didn't just corrupt her, he molded her, shaped her into something even worse. He didn't just find a disciple, he created a monster in his own image. His partner, his successor. And together, they brought an even greater wave of terror than Muse ever could alone. So what does that mean for the MCU? It means we are staring into the abyss of something far greater than just another street-level villain. Muse isn't a one-off antagonist, he's a harbinger of something much darker. His presence signifies a shift in tone, a descent into a more brutal, psychological, and deeply disturbing era for Marvel storytelling. This isn't just another fight for Daredevil, this is a battle for the soul of Hell's Kitchen. And maybe, just maybe, the entire MCU itself. Well, think about it. The showrunners don't introduce a character like Muse without a bigger plan. His introduction in episode 4 is just the beginning. The blood mural, the bodies, the terror that's just Act 1. Because if the comics are anything to go by, Muse is only going to get worse. More brutal. More twisted. His killings will become more elaborate, his messages more cryptic, and his reach more terrifying. And there's something even darker on the horizon, because Muse isn't just a single nightmare. He's an infection. One that spreads, corrupts, and consumes everything in its path. Could Morgan Whittier be coming to the MCU? Could Muse's influence spread beyond Hell's Kitchen, infecting the city like a disease? Could this be the beginning of something far worse, a movement, a following, an entire cult of killers who see death as their canvas and Muse as their prophet? One thing is certain, Muse isn't just another villain. He's not just another problem for Daredevil to solve. He's something else entirely. He's a force of nature, an unstoppable horror creeping through the shadows of Hell's Kitchen. A storm that's about to consume New York, leaving nothing behind but fear, blood, and the haunting echoes of his twisted vision. And Daredevil? He might not be able to stop it. Not because he isn't strong enough, not because he isn't willing to risk everything, but because Muse is something beyond strength, beyond strategy. Muse is chaos, and chaos can't be fought the way Daredevil fights his enemies. It seeps through the cracks. It spreads like wildfire, and no matter how hard you try to contain it, it always finds a way to escape. So what do you think? How far will Muse go? Will Daredevil be able to stop him before the city drowns in his madness? Or is this just the beginning of something even more terrifying, something no hero can contain? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist, every chilling revelation, and every shocking moment in Daredevil, Born Again, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because trust me, you're not going to want to miss what happens next.